And we have two members of the Young Persons Advisory Group with us today as well, which is fantastic. We have Adit Bassi, who's 20 years old. He's currently a medical student in UCL London. He's been a member of the Liverpool Young People's Advisory Group for the last 8 years, and he's now taken on various other roles, I guess being a senior member of the group now, including supporting and mentoring younger members of the advisory group. As well as that, he's undertaken his own PPI with young people as part of his undergraduate degree. And we also have Daisy Barrick, and Daisy is 18 years old. She's currently in her last year of school, and she's moving on to study medicine in October. She's been a member of the advisory group since she was 15, and she's currently involved in a European project around teaching young people around the involvement in the design of clinical trials and medical devices. So I'm going to kick off and hand you over to Jenny directly.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks for the introduction. So, and welcome everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon with Adit and Daisy presenting with me. So, we're going to first of all start off, if technology allows, with a little bit of a quiz just to get an understanding of your experiences of working with young people in the field of clinical research or health research. So, is the link in the chat, Lucy?
Yeah, the link is in the chat there. So if you follow the link and put in the session ID, the first question is open there for everybody to answer.
Sorry, I can't see the link. Yeah, I think you might have to.
It's not there. Yeah.
No problem. I will send it again. Okay, that should be in the chat function there for everybody.
Yeah, you're okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Do I share my screen now, Lucy, then?
You can if you like, or when people log in, the results will pop up on their screen as well, but you can share your screen if you like, Jenny.
Joys of technology.
I know, that's it, isn't it?
Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we can see responses coming in there now. That's great. Answers are flying in there. I can see the numbers going up there.
I can't see anything, Lucy, so what am I doing wrong?
That's okay. You're not doing anything wrong at all, Jenny. You should just be able to fill in the answer, and then when you submit your answer, then when we close the poll, the answers will pop up for everybody then.
Okay, so I'll just test it out in front of everybody then.
Yeah, go for it. Be brave.
So do you think we can open the...
I'd say we can close that poll and then the answer should pop up for everybody now. So everybody, there we go.
Okay, so that's brilliant. So, I mean, there's nothing that jumps out at me that doesn't really resonate with our experiences of working with young people and patients in general. So, fab. So should we go to the next question?
Lovely. I'll just open that up there now.
So please tick if you involved any of the following groups in the design and conduct of your research, and you can tick that all that apply. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just to get a flavour of what your experiences are. Lucy, you might be best placed to tell me when it's best to close the poll.
I will. Don't worry. I can see the answers flying in, and when we get close to the number of people we have attending, I'll close and let you know.
And just so for the audience's sake, we done a similar webinar last week for an international audience. So we're going to do a bit of comparison in terms of people's experiences. So that'll be interesting, and I'll share that with PPI Ignite.
There's just a few more to come in there, so I'll close this poll now in a second. Lovely. There we go.
Brilliant. It's good to see that there's young people under 10 have been involved, which is really good. And again, it's quite unheard of if in the world of patient involvement. So that's good to know, and it'd be good to hear from people's experiences during the chat. So next question, please.
Lovely. There we go.
So,
that's open now.
what do you feel, what impact can involving children, young people and families have on the design of paediatric research? And again, tick all that apply, please.
That's great. Just the last few to come in there, and I'll close this poll then. Lovely. The answer should pop up for you there now in a second. There we go.
Brilliant. I mean, and this all depends on the context and the type of activities that you're getting the young people involved in, but ideally it should be answer D, so all of the above. So next question.
That's open there now.
So if you have involved young people and or families, what has been your 3 biggest challenges? So please, again, just tick the biggest 3 challenges that you've had.
Lovely. There's just a few more to come in there, so I'll close that poll now in another couple of seconds. Okay, those answers should pop up there now in a second. Here we go.
Again, there's no surprises there. So recruitment is a big issue for all of us, and hopefully something that we'll touch on during our demonstration of the online toolkit. Again, using creative methods, again, it's something that we've really struggled with over the years, especially in the early days, trying to teach young people about randomized controlled trials. As you can imagine, it's not very exciting. So, or it can be, as we've learned a few over the years, and ethical issues is a big thing. But again, we can touch on some of that during the presentation. So I think this is the next and final question.
It is, yeah.
So what support would you like to meaningfully involve children, young people and families in your research? And again, you can tick all that apply.
You obviously all needed a moment to think about this question. Everything stopped for a minute and now all the answers are flurrying in again. There's one or two more left to come in. I'll close the poll in a minute. Go.
Okay, brilliant. And hopefully today we'll cover some of those things. So in terms of, you know, what training there is and some links to additional resources. It's nice to see that actually easy how-to guides are needed, because that's the whole purpose of the toolkit, really. But if we now move on to just a brief presentation from my part, just to give you some context as to where we came from and why we set up a young person's advisory group in the first place. And then we're going to do a demonstration of the toolkit with Adit and Daisy in an interview style format. So I'm going to use my technology skills now to get my slides up. Sorry. No, it won't come up. Sorry. Sorry, wait a minute. Share screen. Sorry about that. So we've just done the quiz. So I like to start this by, you know, we've all submitted our words as to what we think patient and public involvement is, but just to give you the official definition, and which is what we've been using for many years through, you know, promoted by the NIHR Involve. So what we actually mean is create an active partnership between patients, carers and the public who have personal experience or an interest in health conditions, in research or research related activities. So it's that active partnership between patients and the public, researchers and doctors and other healthcare professionals. So the PPI agenda in health and social care research, for those of you who've been involved in this work for many years, you'll know it's not a new phenomenon. Issues of health are built into the social fabric of our daily lives, and many of the challenges we have seen have been brought about by social movements. The changes that we've seen have been brought about by social movements. So specifically the AIDS movement, the breast cancer movement and the disability rights movement aim to transform people's experiences of their own health conditions and circumstances. But advocates of patient and public involvement, especially in the world that I work in terms of the National Institute for Health Research, include Professor Dame Sally Davis, who is our former Chief Medical Officer for England, who stressed that involvement made research more credible and often more cost effective. And this approach to patient involvement has come from a quality improvement approach. So involvement equals better research and better quality research. But as Professor Lundy highlighted and demonstrated last week in her webinar, is that, you know, we can also come from this from a rights-based perspective, and that children and young people have rights. And these rights are laid out in the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, as Professor Lundy highlighted and demonstrated. And they have a right to be involved in their own healthcare decisions and have a say in matters that impact directly upon their lives. And this requires creating environments, again, as Professor Lundy highlighted last week, where young people are given the space to form and express their views, and working with key players to allow young people to have a voice and influence change. So regardless of the reason, and this is quite a busy slide, but regardless of the reason behind why you involve children, young people, the gold standard is to involve them right the way throughout the research process, design and delivery, and right the way through to dissemination. So, you know, identifying the unmet needs of young people and children and families, to identifying the priorities that are important to them, right the way through to communicating research findings in an accessible way to other children and young people who it directly affects. So, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, but as a researcher within the NIHR in particular, you know, patients and public involvement is now a major component of the main funding organisations in the UK. So researchers are required to submit how they have involved patients in the funding application and provide clear plans for continued involvement throughout the duration of the research if the application is successful. And this requires, in my opinion, a whole research team approach and to be on board with patient involvement so that they know exactly why they're doing patient involvement and what that model looks like. And then they have to put the resources in to your funding applications to make sure that you can deliver on your patient and public involvement plans. So once you've got over the hurdle of funding, and if you're successful, then you have to apply for your ethics application. And again, the Health Research Authority require that you spell out and highlight how you've involved patients in the design of your study and how you're going to continue to do that. Now, as a member of a ethics committee for 10 years, they never answered this question correctly and never really justified why they involve patients. And I feel they're missing a trick. Researchers are missing a trick here, because if you highlight how you're going to involve and how patients have been involved in the design and conduct already, then it goes in your favour. If you've got a design process where it's quite complex and there's a lot of ethical issues, and you've involved patients to say, this is how I want the study to be designed, this is how I want the information to be designed, it's always best to justify what plans you've put in place. So patient and public involvement is at the heart of health research in the UK, and the government recently have set out the plans to strengthen PPI in the coming years in its new strategy. So it is on the agenda, and I think it's firmly on the agenda, hence why there's these type of webinars today. So with increasing demand for PPI, researchers require information and support and possible training, and that's being clearly showed in the quiz question responses. So people require training, they don't necessarily always know how to do patient involvement, and especially with children and young people. And researchers need the practical tools to be able to do this and guide their processes, so that patients, more importantly, get the best experience possible, but then you get the best out of the patients to inform your research. And hence why there's over the recent years, the need for these UK standards for public involvement that guide the quality and consistency of patient involvement in the research, and which is extremely invaluable. Why aren't you doing this now? Oh, there you go. So, but working with children, young people, and I think Professor Lundy touched on this in detail last week, but you know, it can be complex and it's multi-dimensional, requiring consideration into the following 4 main areas. So you have to consider the level of participation. So take into consideration the degrees of power sharing between adults and young people. You then have to focus on the decision making. Is it individual decision making, or is it collective? Hence, like the likes of the establishment of the YPAGs, for example. Then you have to consider the model of participation. So are you going to choose a consultation, a collaboration, or a child-led approach to your research? And then we need to clarify the term, what we mean by children, which covers a diverse group who are not only different in their personal circumstances, so age, sex, ethnicity, culture, disability, social and economic circumstances, but they're changing interests and capacities as they grow older. So a lot to consider. So in 2005, when my role began in the NIHR, what was the Medicines for Children's Research Network? So we had a specific remit to focus in on medicine and drug trials for children. So, you know, we decided to a pragmatic approach. We would set up a young person's advisory group model as a pilot to see if that approach would work in this context, but to inform our practices of working with children. Because at the time it was very much focused on involving parents in committees that young people wouldn't have been able to have taken part in. And that was really important for me because I, without having a medical background, felt out of place in these adult environments. So if you bring in young people in to these environments, it was going to be even worse for them. So we wanted to create this safe space for young people to have their voice and their opinions heard and feel part of the research process. So we had a wide recruitment strategy, hoping to get a good mix of young people. But despite our efforts, we started the group with only 7 young people. And the youngest at the time was 8, up to 18. And so there was a mix of members interested. So the youngest was currently taking part in a clinical trial for a cancer trial. There was some with chronic conditions, but then there was some with just a general interest or wanted to become a doctor and, you know, general interest in medicine. So there was a wide variety of backgrounds, and then the group evolved over the years. But we learned a lot during the pilot, and it changed our processes in how to suit the needs of the young people. And I'll give you an example. So at the beginning, we used to get the ideas of the researchers or get the ask of the researchers to say, and we would present that in a child-friendly manner. And then we would take that back to the researcher, and the researcher would come back to us with any feedback. So it was quite an onerous process where the young people said to me one day, well, why don't we get the researchers to come and present their research to us? And then if we've got any questions, we'll ask them ourselves and we'll get the direct response there and then. And although that seems like a simple idea and a no-brainer now, it wasn't at the time when we hadn't considered that, but that is built into our processes as, you know, as we continue to evolve our young persons group. So the role of the group was to learn about health and clinical research in monthly meetings, to support and work in partnership with researchers in the delivery of health research, and provide input and collaborate with key organisations, which I think is really important, because if you haven't got them in the audience, if you haven't got them listening to how important it is for children and young people to be involved, then you're actually working in your own silos and you're not making a real impact. And that was a biggest learning curve that I found. This chart, and we're not going to go into too much detail here because I want to go over to demonstrate the toolkit, but this chart just gives you a flavour of how many activities the Liverpool group, for example, have been involved in since 2018. So they've contributed to 83 projects in the last 3 financial years. And despite the pandemic, we've contributed to 35 projects this year alone, including 5 COVID studies that required rapid review. So that's quite impressive. So they're all familiar with Zoom, and I'm sure Addis and Daisy will cover some of that in a minute. So you will see the most common activity is reviewing patient information sheets, whether that be patient information sheets that are going directly to participants, or the informed consent templates, website design, or design of questionnaires, or design of interview questions. The young people have a vast amount of experience in this over the years. I think in total, I think we've looked at 300 patient information sheets, which is quite a task for those who are designing patient information sheets. But what we've tried to encourage over the years, and it's taken 15 years, is to try and get that active involvement right at the early protocol design stage. But again, that's dependent on the research question and the disease area that we're looking at. It's not always possible, but we try to encourage that. So we decided to, write up our experiences of working with our young people's group, and through the establishment of many other YPAGs across the globe following our successful model in Liverpool. And we created this online tool to help researchers to set up a YPAG if they needed to, or know how to access one if they needed to. And we based this sort of like tool on a survey with over 60 researchers working in drug trials and semi-structured interviews with 5 founder YPAG members. And this was published in this paper last year. But what we realised was the toolkit was out of date and needs to be a live toolkit, so needs refreshing quite often. So we're now going to show you our revised toolkit, and we're going to now interview each other and ask each other questions based on these 4 categories, but show you some of the pages within the toolkit that we can add to, and it's a living document, so we'll help you in your, if you want to set up a YPAG, how you would go about doing that in the field of health. So I'm going to stop this and then, oh, sorry, take you to the live website. Sorry, I'm having really bad computer problems today. Sorry, I've got to do it in right again. Here we go. So this is our revised toolkit, and it's based on our new European Young Persons Advisory Group Network website. So please take a look at our work on that. This is about our Young Persons Advisory Group across Europe. And one of my colleagues is online from Barcelona, which is great to see. So this was our toolkit that we created. So we broke this down based on the original toolkit, and we broke this down into 4 sections just so it makes it easier for people to access. And we're going to touch on some of those in our question and answer now with Adit and Daisy. So I'm going to ask the first question to Adit. So I don't know where Adit is.
I'm here.
Yeah, and Daisy. So Adit, I'll start with you first. So how old were you when you joined the YPAG, and how did you hear about the group, and why did you want to be involved?
So I've been part of the group for about 8 years now, so it's been a long time since I was 13, and I initially had no clue what I wanted to do in life, and to be honest, that's still the same, but we are here where we are. But obviously, since being part of the group and learning more about things such as like clinical trials and how pediatric healthcare works, it actually got me more interested in medicine, such that it was part of the inspiration for where I am now and the reason I'm studying medicine now.
Okay, thanks, Adit. Daisy?
So I've been a member of the group since I was about 15, and I originally heard about the group through my sister, who always used to come home saying how much she enjoyed it, and I didn't really understand much about it, but after joining, I understood a lot more about clinical trials and just the world of children's health research, and also the importance of the patient and public involvement.
So what has made you both, so I know Adit, you've been in the group now for over 8 years, but so what has made you want to stay in the group, and what have you enjoyed the most? And then over to Daisy for the same question.
I think for me, it's the fact that you can first of all meet loads of different people, which is a great thing to do, from all different walks of life, and being able to interact with them together for the common goal of bettering healthcare for future children and young people. It sounds very grand, but it is what we do, and it feels so empowering. And one of the other amazing things that we do is definitely we get to see new and amazing technologies, because this is research, and these are often in the design stage. So examples of these are like 3D printing and virtual reality technology, which are exciting things to be part of, really.
Daisy?
Yeah, so I sort of had an interest in medicine before joining the group, and I was studying science in school, but by being a part of the group, I got to really see the practical side of being able to be involved in innovative research, as Adit was saying, and really have an impact on children's health. So I think as well, meeting all of the different researchers and learning about all of these different aspects of research that I'd never heard of, and being able to discuss these ideas with other members of the group, all of different ages and different interests.
So obviously I talked about, meeting lots of different kinds of young people from all walks of life and that kind of thing. But just a question for you, Jen, how have you ensured diverse representation within the group? Like, are there any gaps in this diversity, and are there ways in the future you can think of, increasing this diversity?
Thanks, Edit. And I think so. There is a section on diverse and inclusive involvement, and but I suppose the first point I would like to make is that no patient involvement group can ever be, claim to be representative of the patient population. And so we're fully aware that involving a small group of young people will never be representative of all young people. However, we do our utmost to reach as wide an audience as possible, targeting schools, youth centres, youth exclusion groups and so on, and working in the community and working with partners, charities, working with those community groups who work directly with children who are excluded from school, so that they're not in mainstream education. So, but the YPAGs do have its limitations, and I'll be honest with that in terms of, we can only do what we can do and we're only resourced to do what we can do. But we have a wide strategy to go out and do other projects depending on the researchers ask. So that's absolutely crucial to build that into your recruitment strategy. But I think, like you say, we are aware of the limitations of just having one YPAG dealing with a multitude of activities. But I think Professor Lundy said it in her talk last week. It's about what is the ask, how are we going to do that, and if it's different to the YPAG model, then we'll do that different model. So we try and accommodate it that way, but it's a resource issue that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, and obviously, because I've been a part of the group for a while, but obviously not quite from the start. So how did you receive the funding to set the group up initially, and to keep it going, really?
So originally, and again, this is about in the section about getting started. So there's loads of tips. So if you click on all of these in terms of, so I'll just take you to the next, funding and sustainability. It gives you an idea of, or gives you some questions to consider, and about plan and budget. But going back to how we started, so originally my post, and this is important, my post was fully resourced, full-time post to deliver a strategy for involving young people through what was the Medicines for Children's Research Network, which changed, it restructured in 2015. And so my funding comes from a variety of sources. So whether that's through NIHR funded research grants, or European funding, or through our Alder Hey Clinical Research Facility, who fund the Young Persons Advisory Group. So my advice is to have some core funding to fund somebody to deliver your strategy, but then you'd also need funding.
I know, but that means it's on. I can't use the.
Then you'd need funding to support the actual group's activities. So we have core funding coming from our Alder Hey Clinical Research Facility to run those groups and to keep them going. But I think what I would say is that we also now can charge researchers to access the groups and claim our funding back, so that we can sustain the groups going forward and other activities with young people. So I'd like to go to you both now in terms of, so what other than payments do you think? So as a YPAG, we give you vouchers as a thank you for taking part in meetings, and try to, do other things to say thank you. But what other than payments do you think you gain from being a part of the group? So I'll start with Daisy.
So as a result of being a part of the group, I've been able to increase my creative skills. So examples like coming up with names and logos for different researchers. And I've also grown in confidence and being able to talk about medical topics and research. So for me, that was really helpful with my university medicine interviews, to just feel more comfortable discussing that. We're also lucky to receive lots of extra opportunities as a result of being in the group. So as was mentioned earlier, being able to co-create the education toolkit for the European project, which is to help other young people know that they can make an input on research and allow that to be more accessible. So even though Adit and I both interested in medicine, and Adit already studying medicine, lots of the other members of the group who, you know, might not want a career with medicine still find that they can receive the same benefits and skills. So teamwork, discussion, critical thinking, problem solving, all those sorts of skills that can be applicable to whatever it is that you'd like to do.
I think that everything Daisy has said is so true, and I think it's one of those things where everyone takes something different from how they engage with the group. One of the things that I personally have definitely taken from the group is the ability and confidence to, you know, talk and present to lots of people about a topic that I'm passionate about. So a couple of years ago, say, I was too scared to speak up within the group, which is only 15, 20 of people who, you know, a lot of our class are my friends as well. But what we're in right now is a prime example of an opportunity that the group has opened up for me. Obviously, I know I wish I could be, you know, in Ireland presenting to all of you, but you're gonna have to deal with the virtual version of me for now anyway. And just on top of that, it also opens up a lot of different opportunities for involvement in things such as, you know, big corporations such as the National Institute of Health Research and other big companies such as Pfizer, which is really amazing experience for someone, especially in my position.
Thanks, Adit. So, in your opinion, what makes a good meeting? So, do you have any particular memorable meetings, and why are they memorable? And has the pandemic impacted upon that at all? Adit?
Yeah, in terms of the pandemic in particular, you know, there are little things that would happen during in-person meetings that kind of lost when it's done on an online platform. You know, you can't speak to the person next to you or make new friends or connections, which obviously is a very big thing for young people to, you know, to form connections and collaborations with those around them. And, you know, of course, on top of that, we can't forget the food that comes with the day. It's always an exciting surprise to, you know, rate the food that we get given for our lunch break and then chat to new people over lunch about the, you know, the things going on in the world. And that, you know, or talk about our lives and that kind of thing. And that is kind of lost in an online platform, which is, you know, so I can't wait to get back to in person, but I do think that we have done a great job at, you know, adapting to the situation.
Yeah, and I would say as well, I think we all can appreciate when a researcher comes at a stage where they can actually take our suggestions on board, and any ideas that we might come up can actually be implemented, like not as though they've sort of finished what they're doing and they just want to check it. So I think everyone in the group can sort of, you know, tell when a researcher really wants to listen to our ideas. So that's been really good. We helped to create an animation earlier last year, and the researcher kept coming back each time and showing the little bits of progress that we'd made, and we could see our ideas actually in action. And then we'd make a little suggestion and she'd come back and we could see it all coming together and seeing our ideas. So that's also really useful.
Thank you. Now, I'm conscious of time and I know we want to open it up to other questions and from the audience. So I'm just wondering, do we want to finish on, do you want to talk about, do you think you are heard within the group? Do you think you're making an impact on child health research?
I personally think that's a really important question, because it's fundamentally one of the main reasons why young people are keen to be part of groups like this. You know, they want to have their voice heard and be listened to. And I think maybe 5-10 years ago, our group was used as kind of a tick box when looking for grant funding and that kind of thing. But we've had a real push in the last few years for researchers to, you know, show us what they've taken from our feedback. And, you know, we're very keen on getting researchers involved if they can show us an active plan of when they plan to come back to us and show us how we have positively impacted their research. And obviously this isn't something we've got fully sorted yet. And there are still instances where researchers don't always give us feedback. And this can be quite frustrating because, you know, it's also a learning opportunity for us to see what researchers are looking for.
Thanks, Adit. Daisy?
Yeah, so just mentioning impact, I think the project that Adit and I are both involved with, the European co-creation, that's a perfect example of us being able to see our impact, because not only are we sort of just being asked for our ideas, we're sort of involved in creating those ideas as well alongside the researchers. So even though obviously not all research projects can be done in that way, sort of allowing the young people to feel as though they are sort of a part of the research and giving their ideas is sort of a good way for us to see our impact. And as Adit said, coming back to the group and explaining our impact is also really helpful.
Thanks, Daisy. And I am sorry about that we've rushed through this, but there's, check this toolkit out in terms of, there's some really fantastic resources on there on how to evaluate, how to get feedback from researchers. And as Adit said, it's not easy. That's the hardest part of our job, is chasing researchers up to see whether they've used the young people's comments and taken the comments on board, and if not, why not? So that we can at least show them that they're making a difference as they're going along. And that's not always, you cannot always do that. We don't always get it right, but we try our best to do that. So please check out those resources, and I'm going to hand it over to you all now for questions, and please ask Addis and Daisy about their experiences. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Addis and Daisy. That was so informative. And while people are perhaps preparing to ask a question, I'm going to abuse my position and ask the first one, perhaps. But one of the things that came to mind, one of the activities, one of the biggest activities you've been involved in is commenting, I suppose, on patient information sheets. And I'm kind of thinking, if you had a, top 5 things what researchers shouldn't do, or what are the things that you pick up on that might be the classic kind of things that you would comment on in terms of making it more young person friendly or accessible?
You want to go? Shall I go?
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the things that research needs to be really careful of is the age that they are, aiming, the age range of the target age range, so to speak. It's one of those things where children, young people know a lot more than you realize sometimes, but equally you can't go too far that way. And I'm not saying it's like the easiest thing in the world to do to find the exact right balance, but I can say for certain through looking through so many that it has been done. So therefore I know that it can be done. And even if it's just like going through the toolkit or speaking to other people, there are ways to make sure that you're not being condescending, but also being informative enough and striking that balance and getting it right for the specific age groups.
Yeah, just to sort of follow on from Adit as well, like I think the layout can also be really important sometimes if there's sort of just one big chunk of text, and especially if it's for younger children and having to just sort of, and for anyone, it's always easier if things are like split up into either bullet points or sometimes they'll say like a question like what will happen to me, and underneath there can be a sort of little timetable. It's always helpful if young people can sort of visualize and really understand exactly what's going to, if it's a clinical trial, for example, sort of see the plan of exactly what they'll be involved in.
I think following on from that, Anna, as well. So that's why when I mentioned in the talk about...
Sorry to interrupt you, Jenny. Your volume has gone quite low. I don't know if you need to move it a bit closer to your screen, maybe?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Sorry for interrupting you.
Sorry. Maybe it's my voice that's going lower because I'm losing it. No, so I found that we were banging our head against a brick wall for many, many years until we developed that really good partnership and collaboration with the Health Research Authority. And we're saying to them, so they were producing guidance, which was about 192 page long guidance document on how to develop the best patient information sheet. And researchers are just cutting and pasting exact chunks of that and then expecting and then writing it for the parent and then just reducing it in size based on age. And it was so frustrating. But it was, that's why it's really important to say, you've worked with patients, you've worked with the young people, and this is how they want the layout. This is what they want. This is, they understand it in this way for that age, for that ability, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so absolutely, that's really good comments to tailor it and not assume that it's just a cut down or a shortened version or Thank you for that. We've a
Sorry, Anna, just to
couple-
say to everybody, if you have a question you'd like to ask, there's a few in the chat and we'll have a look at those now. But you can use the reactions function, the raise hand function as well. So on the bottom right in your screen, if you go into reactions, you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Anna, we have a few there in the chat. If you want to go in and perhaps
Sure.
use one or two of those.
Yeah, great. So the first one that came in there is just asking if Daisy or Adit have been involved in reviewing ethics applications. Either of you want to take that?
I think not formally, I don't think, unless Jen remembers something better than I remember. But being part of the group, I don't think that's not the stage that we look at things specifically. So we're kind of just giving our input on the design and say the delivery or the patient information sheets and that kind of thing of specific research. So I wouldn't say it's the actual looking at the ethical side of things. Like that's not our remit.
Sure.
You kind of have to be an expert to like be able to do that. And we're kind of a young person's group who are providing our opinions, who theoretically shouldn't have any background knowledge on these kind of things and should be able to provide it from the point of view of the patient or of the user, the service user, or the person who's going to be taking part in that trial.
I think so. Again, for me, the ethics application, for example, we've never been approached by the Health Research Authority to look at, and we don't know what role the young people could play in that, because at that point it's too late because the funding's already been provided, and it's the ethics application that I think is at too much of a later stage to have any benefit for the young people to review it. What would be the benefits of that, unless it was looking at the PPI plans? But then again, that would be the funders' responsibility to do that. So,
yeah.
There's obviously ethical issues. There's a lot of ethical issues in paediatric trials, but I think we tackle that in advance of the ethics committee. So I don't know what role the young people could play in that, other than saying that the patient information sheet was a bit rubbish by the time it got to the ethics committee again.
Okay, great. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to just put in two more. One is around just payment, and you mentioned this before, and Adit, you mentioned the payment by way of food and pizzas and the nice things that you get at the meetings, which is always, I know, really important. And somebody is just asking, how do you kind of balance that in terms of payment advice and keeping the balance between giving people the vouchers or payment, and that you don't want that to be the main motivator. So how do you keep people engaged and rewarded for how do you strike that balance?
Well, first of all, we never really, when we recruit, we don't ever mention the vouchers as well. That's not so much because it's a big amount of money, or an incentive, but we don't publicize it that way. We publicize it in that the opportunities that would be available for young people and enhance their CVs or their college application or whatever, and then, we don't feel £20 is enough, to be fair, in all honesty, or, and there's got to be better ways to pay our young people as well. But our host organisations it's a nightmare to, as Lucy, I'm sure, would be able to tell you, it's a nightmare to get that through your host organisation. So we don't think that is the big driver. And as Adit and Daisy have said, I think they benefit from it in other ways, more so than the voucher, in all honesty. So maybe we have got the ratio right.
Sure. You happy enough with that, Daisy and Adit?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't know, I don't think I knew about the vouchers before I joined the group. So then it's just a nice little surprise at the end.
Yeah, so it's a token. It's a thank you. Yeah. There's just a question here about safeguarding, and I am conscious of time now, but there's a question here about safeguarding. Any suggestions in relation to safeguarding when you have YPAGs where the age range expands across the age groups? So if you've got 14 to 16-year-olds and 18 to 25-year-olds, are there any considerations that you should make as a facilitator?
So there is a section on that in the toolkit, so I'd advise
Right.
you to look into it that a bit more. There's a safeguarding aspect, but yeah, so originally we went for the UNCRC definition of what a child is up to 18, but as you can see, ADIT is plus that. So we've had to accommodate our, safeguarding policies for that, because he's now, in a sense, a mentor for the younger age group, because we don't want to lose that expertise. But what I suppose Addis, and I'm sure Addis will be able to speak, is he's gone on to do other things as well outside of the young person's advisory group. So even though he attends the YPAG meetings still, there's other opportunities that he gets involved in that. So safeguarding's covered, basically, in other words. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, there's a section on the toolkit about that.
Okay, great. And there's two more that I might just flag up, because we're not going to have time to answer them all, but I might also say, if people want to continue putting them into the chat, perhaps we can channel those questions onto you and get back to people on it. So sorry if we don't get to them all. One was just around about, how often the meetings take place and how long they last. I guess some of that is, you've said, I think, monthly meetings. What would they generally last? A couple of hours?
Yeah, so they normally are every 6 weeks, but due to COVID, then they're actually every 3 or 4 weeks now. And they normally look at about 4 research projects. So at a face-to-face meeting, you're looking at about 4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
So it's a long meeting.
Yeah.
But we try to have really regular breaks, have a nice long lunch, as Adit mentioned. And which helps, and try and make it as interactive as possible. So but yes, somebody's asking about how the toolkit link, and apologies, that was on my last slide. So somebody
great.
So it's all there in
Thank you, Naya. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, I think might leave it there, unless any of our speakers have anything to add to that as a closing statement. I know Lucy will be sending a link for the evaluation, so I would encourage people to fill in the evaluations, please, and return them to influence our future seminars, and keep an eye out for the upcoming seminars and shared learning groups, of which Lucy, I'm sure, will inform you more. So thank you so much to Jenny, to Adit, and to Daisy. Good luck with the project. It really sounds fantastic. I certainly, for one, will be looking at the toolkit and learning from our point of view, and so sorry that we couldn't meet you in person, but it was a great opportunity.
Next time, Anna, hopefully.
Exactly. So maybe pass back to yourself, Lucy.
Thank you so much to all the speakers and to yourself, Anna, for chairing. That was such an informative session. I really took so much away from it. Thank you so much. I can see all the thank yous and brilliant and everything coming in there in the chat. So a huge thank you to all of you. And as Anna said there, I will circulate a feedback form just so we can tailor future seminars. And we'll also circulate a recording of today of a later date. And I'll send you the information in relation to upcoming seminars that we have. Thank you so much to everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.